Well, we are doing this dual stream thing. College football playoff rankings. They are here, and this is a pretty exciting time. I'm trying to get all organized over here, so just pardon me. I thought I had it organized, but I guess not. So, yeah, we are looking at the college football playoff rankings here, and we're doing it live. I'm going to have to cut this and restart it so that way I can re-upload it to YouTube. So hop in this chat here. I don't know where that playoff rankings image went. Oh my gosh, that's disgusting. Whatever. Didn't download to the right source. This is what you do when you try to rush into being live. But it's fine. We are going to do this thing here. Save image as. Thank you to the college football playoff. Okay, what is happening here? Why is it saving as that? It's weird. Let me see if I can find a different rankings list to use. I mean, this was posted. This will work, I guess. I don't even know what these files are, man. Oh, this is ridiculous. Okay. Remember, once upon a time, Tennessee was ranked number 1 in these initial rankings. Do you guys remember that? Funny stuff. Very funny stuff. Dude, it's got to be somewhere out here. This is ridiculous. I don't know why it's not letting me save this image as like a PDF. So I'm going to try to do this. Try to pull it up with the playoff prediction slide. Some of you guys may have already seen the predictions. All right. All right, let's do this thing again. Well, we got college football playoff rankings from the committee, and I have revised my projections. We got a little bit to discuss from tonight's rankings, so make sure you guys leave a like on the video and certainly subscribe if you want more regular college football content. We're going to be pumping it out early through the week. Here, we're going to be giving you a rundown of the next week, week 11. Rundown of that slate, and we're going to give you Walk That Line, a big bounce back week coming. I'm Promising you that. So make sure you guys like the video and subscribe. Today, we got playoff rankings. They're right here. As you can see, the rankings kind of indicate that, all right, resume does mean something, but it does not mean everything. I also like with this graphic, the Vanderbilt logo looks just so out of place. It's so big. Anyway, this is from the playoff website. It's not like it was something that I created. I would have done a much better job. Hire me. Anyway, we got Tennessee at 25, and that's probably my biggest issue, right? And then Memphis is the highest ranked Group of 5 team. I have said for weeks now, even though I think James Madison should get more consideration, I think it is going to be the winner of the American. I just don't think it's going to be Memphis. I don't buy Memphis, but hey, they're sitting here at 8-1. They could possibly be the team that makes it into the college football playoff there. So we got a lot to unpack here with the playoff rankings. It's mostly good. The big takeaway you have is Notre Dame up at 10, Miami down at 18. And what would happen for Miami to be able to make that resume more comparable? They both have trips to Pittsburgh on deck in the future. So, I mean, what we're looking at as far as resumes go, you can't really say it's going to change so drastically for Miami in Miami's favor to the point where Miami would go all the way from 18 to 10. They're actually one of the few teams in this ranking that I actually think is eliminated from the college football playoff altogether, unless they find a way, I guess, to backdoor into the ACC championship, but that's just not going to happen. So when you're looking at the rankings, it's like, all right, I don't see a path for Miami, don't see much of a path for Washington, and I don't see a path for Tennessee. Maybe Missouri also doesn't have a path, but the thing is Missouri has enough ahead of them that, like, if they beat Texas A&M this week, that would be pretty huge. However, with Missouri, you got to kind of factor in the injury to Bo Pribula, starting quarterback over there, going with the true freshman the rest of the year. So when you're looking at it, like I mentioned, I think Tennessee and Miami are the two teams that really don't have a shot. And I'm just talking about like a mathematical shot, not even what I'm thinking could break teams' ways or what won't break their way. Like, do I really think Pittsburgh's going to win out? No, but if they do, they're in the playoff, right? So you have different scenarios that you could play out in your mind. I think the respect to Utah at number 13 was a big takeaway for me because it showed a lot of respect and a lot of love for the Big 12. And I get why they did that with Utah at number 13. They put them at number 13 essentially to be consistent with number 10 Notre Dame, right? The two losses that Notre Dame has, number one, earlier in the season, certainly a factor. But number two, against two top 20 teams, one of them on the road on the last play. Now, I think the big difference is Utah did lose to number 7 and number 8, BYU and Texas Tech. However, they did kind of get dominated in those games. My thing is what happens to Texas Tech now if they were to lose a second game against BYU at home with game day coming into town? How far do they drop? I think they would just slide in at number 12 and everybody else would bump up, assuming that they win. You never know, of course, in the sport. Like Oregon has a tough road trip against Iowa, for example. This is definitely setting up very nicely for the Big 12 and very poorly for the ACC. Any sort of scenario of two ACC schools is slim to none. I think it would take Georgia Tech winning out, beating Georgia, and then losing in the ACC championship to either Virginia or Louisville. Now, when you look at the ACC, technically, Virginia only has, the one out-of-conference loss to NC State. Louisville would have to overcome a 2-game deficit to be able to pass up Virginia for an ACC championship bid, but the best thing that happened to them was Georgia Tech losing. I don't know how the tiebreakers would break, but given that most metrics have to do with record of common opponents within the conference, I actually think Louisville would get that tiebreaker over Georgia Tech in a straight one-on-one tiebreaker or a three-way tie scenario. I don't know how that would play out for Virginia, but it would be very interesting. What this is telling me, though, is more likely than not the ACC, they are going to have one team get in. And then when you're talking about the Big 12, you might be talking about two teams getting in. And those two teams are really BYU and Texas Tech. But the committee did tell you that if Utah wins out, goes to the Big 12 championship, they're going to have a shot. They're going to have a shot. And I don't even think they really have much of a path to the Big 12 championship. They still need Cincinnati to lose one more game, even though they have that head-to-head. But BYU could take care of that issue themselves, I guess. But that just kind of traps Utah into the spot, right? Assuming that Cincinnati is able to take care of business and bounce back from that blowout loss in Salt Lake City, now you're in a double-edged sword if you're Utah. I'm kind of rambling on, so I want to restart this. We're going to restart this because this is not a clean delivery. 3, 2, 1. Well, we have college football playoff rankings to react to, and we also got playoff projections to give you. So I'm here live on YouTube and Twitch to try to do that. If you have any comments in the live chat, go ahead and drop them as we try to build this channel up. My name is Colin Bashningle, the host here at Bash's College Football Show. And for more regular content, like the video, because if you like the video, other people who like college football will find the video, and comment down below as well your thoughts on these rankings, any of the opinions that I share, and share your opinions down below in the chat. And you can certainly subscribe as well to help boost those numbers up and keep up with the channel's progress here. We got playoff rankings, and we're going to get into some instant reaction to these playoff rankings, and then we also are going to get to the projections. So let's get straight into it. Here you go with the playoff rankings. Biggest takeaways that we have here. They did hold firm, showing you that they believe Ohio State is the best team in the country at number 1, with Indiana 2 and 3, despite the fact that 2 and 3, Indiana and A&M, they do have better wins than Ohio State does. Now, Ohio State has notched the number 11 team in the country. They were ranked 13th in the AP poll, 2 spots below Oklahoma. Kind of shows the garbage that the AP poll was. Now, the playoff committee, I think, actually did a pretty good job here. There's little things you can nitpick here and there and say that team should be ranked higher. I've been in the minority where I say Miami should still be ranked above Notre Dame, because I just don't see the benefit of why teams like Miami would play a big out-of-conference game. And I get there's ACC association with Notre Dame, but you're talking about a Miami team who played a really challenging USF team and blew them out. Played a Florida team who was hyped up in the preseason, and how would they have known that they were going to drop off? And they played Notre Dame, and they took care of business out of conference. Now, with that being said, I am not going to have much sympathy for Miami. They put themselves in this spot, playing the way they did, specifically offensively with the turnovers against Louisville, playing the way they did down the stretch of that game, blowing it against SMU. I get they were complaining about the roughing the passer call. It is what it is. You put yourself in that situation on the road at SMU in the first place. So Miami has not been playing good football lately, and I understand the argument for why you would say Notre Dame should be much higher than Miami. To the committee and the way that the committee ranks things, and maybe I should have factored this in a little bit more. If you are not similar, head-to-head is not going to be looked at as a tiebreaker. Notre Dame and Miami is not evaluated similarly. Texas and Oklahoma, Virginia and Louisville, they are, which is why you get the benefit of the head-to-head in those situations and not in that situation. I think the only place I could poke a hole in the rankings too much is I don't really think Tennessee should be ranked at number 25, but who are you going to replace them with, right? At the end of the day, they did not see a group of 5 team that impressed them enough to put them in the top 25. I understand that, because their highest ranked projected team right now is Memphis. Highest ranked projected group of 5 champion, which that's another thing to factor in here. We don't know if Memphis is actually their highest valued group of 5 team, because This is going to go to teams that are already notched as conference leaders. Memphis is currently the conference leader because they're not going to project. So let's say they had a North Texas ranked above Memphis. We wouldn't know that because Memphis is the projected leader. But what this does tell you is for sure Memphis is ranked higher than San Diego State, James Madison. Again, I know the mainstream media is not going to talk about the possibility of San Diego State or James Madison, but that has to be kind of floated out there because those are two other likely champions, especially James Madison, a likely champion out of the group of five that might have a debate here, might have a case. So uh, they're just kind of sitting back, hoping the American just beats each other up. I mean, I got the schedules here for the breakdowns of the college football playoff here. Memphis still has to play Tulane, a road trip at ECU. That's not going to be easy. And Navy. Those are three teams from the top half of that conference. Memphis could easily lose a game. North Texas, on the other hand, I think you're looking at the most likely scenario. North Texas is going to get to the American Athletic Conference Championship more than likely. They would have to lose in that conference championship for any sort of tiebreaker, in my opinion, or any sort of leverage for a James Madison or San Diego State. USF down the stretch, they have to play UTSA, who looked really good last Thursday against Tulane. They have to play also at Navy and then at UAB, who apparently is tricky according to Memphis. Tulane, they have to play at Memphis, at FAU. I mean, the final three games after Memphis is not super tough for them, but then they got to win the conference championship. The thing about Tulane is they just had a loss to UTSA. They got blown out against Ole Miss. So I'd be curious to see where James Madison would stack up against a two-loss Tulane team who got blown out against a Power Four. Excuse me. I would think that Tulane would still get the nod, given that they beat Northwestern by 20, beat Duke pretty comfortably. So, and then there's Navy out there, I guess, has a spot, has a scenario, but their final stretch is so dang tough. I mean, they already just lost to North Texas. They play at Notre Dame. Then they have to play USF. Then they have to play at Memphis. And oh, yeah, Army Navy could complicate things. So that's just kind of breaking down the group of five and what's going on there. I personally actually expect for another team that not too many people are talking about, but they will talk about it. And I actually saw a graphic on ESPN that was sharing who they think is their playoff predictor, who that model, I guess, or whatever you want to call it, says is the most likely team out of the group of five to make it. Now, when you break down these other scenarios too, I can go ahead and flip the page back to the Power Four and what they have coming down the stretch. At the end of the day, I'm actually projecting SMU to really be a thorn in everybody's side within the ACC. If you take a look at their schedule down the stretch, their tough challenge is Louisville at home. They could take care of that Louisville problem themselves. They're sitting pretty. I don't know how, again, this is another ACC thing where we just don't know at this moment. In my scenario that I paint, there would be a tiebreaker between SMU and Virginia. I rewarded it to SMU, but I'm not quite sure about that. So maybe, just maybe, SMU has a little bit of playoff life left because they lost two of their three games out of conference. They still only have one loss, and they have a manageable schedule down the stretch. If they can find their way into the ACC championship, they are one game away from making the college football playoff. It's still a little bit of a long shot. You need a little bit of help if you're SMU, but you're right there. 7-1 is definitely possible for SMU in conference play, and that is important to note. I am giving Georgia Tech the benefit of the doubt. A Boston College team who gave Notre Dame a heck of a game. I'm giving them the win. I'm giving them the win at home against Pitt. Those are not guarantees. And obviously what happens against Georgia doesn't necessarily matter for the ACC race. So when you're breaking down the ACC, I'm expecting Georgia Tech and SMU to match up. I'm also, based on tiebreakers over here, I am projecting a three-way tie between BYU, Utah, and Cincinnati, where I think Cincinnati gets a big notch in their belt is they're going to get a huge win against BYU at home. I'm back and forth on that game. Still got to see more, but I am kind of banking on BYU being a similar team to what we saw last year. 8-0 up to this point, 2-2 in November or in the later stretch of the season. So, if that were to happen, I wrote it down as Texas Tech and Utah would play in the Big 12 championship, but I'm, again, not sure about these tiebreakers. Indiana and Michigan is my pick to come out of the Big 10. I cannot pick Ohio State to beat Michigan until they do. That's the bottom line. Ohio State will win the rest of their games and be 11-1. Then you're going to have the SEC, Alabama, Texas. That's who I'm projecting. I am projecting that you are going to see a little bit of chaos in the SEC. I think Texas A&M is going to lose to Texas. Texas is playing good football right now. I think that they are playing better football than Georgia, and Georgia has a tricky road spot while Texas is sitting on a bye this week. So I got Texas beating Georgia on the road. Bold call, but I'm going with it. And then Texas A&M, I think they win. Their playoff lives are on the line. They're right there in the thick of things. I do not expect Oklahoma, Vanderbilt, Missouri to go without a loss the rest of the year. In fact, I project 2 losses for Missouri over here. But Ole Miss will be fine. I did have them losing to Mississippi State. I don't really trust Ole Miss. They have to play Florida and Mississippi State. I just feel like they're going to lose one of those 2 games. They might not, though. We'll see. I do have Georgia dropping that game to Texas, which means that they would kind of fall. And I got Alabama winning out, and we got Texas, Alabama in the conference championship, which I lean towards Alabama. So when we pull up the playoff projections based on what I just told you, I expect to happen. I expect for Indiana to control Michigan, and more on Michigan in a second. Alabama as the SEC champs. That blemish in week 1 is going to be the difference between them being the number 1 overall seed and not. I think they're going to be slotted in at number 2. And with the committee being impressed with Ohio State, as long as they're not super embarrassing in the loss against Michigan, I think they're going to keep Ohio State above Texas A&M and have Texas A&M ranked 4th. But I also could see that being flipped. Now you get into the next group. I think Texas Tech finishes 12-1 and knocks off any sort of possibility of 2 Big 12 teams. They just look like the best team in the Big 12 with 1 week withstanding. Now, if they can stay healthy at quarterback, that would help my case a little bit. But they do look like the best team in the Big 12, and I firmly believe that Texas Tech is going to win out, be the Big 12 champs at this moment. I shouldn't even say I firmly believe it. I don't know who they're going to be matched up against in the Big 12 championship, which kind of makes me just lean towards Texas Tech. And then I got North Texas. I just talked about their path to the conference championship, and it's a 1-game season. I think they don't want to see USF again. That's for sure. But if they end up seeing USF, then you're going to talk about a North Texas team that's going to be gunning for revenge, and that'll be a huge, huge victory if they can bounce back and end up beating the Bulls in that game. I actually have South Florida losing another game, so I don't believe that that's going to be the matchup for North Texas. I lean towards Tulane at this moment. I think North Texas beats Tulane. Ole Miss 8, Georgia 7, Texas 6. I have 3 SEC schools. If Texas goes on the run, I think they're capable of going on down the stretch. Even a loss in the SEC championship, they're going to get the benefit over an Ole Miss team coming off an Egg Bowl loss, over a Georgia team who they beat on the road. So I still think even with 3 losses, you're going to see Texas there at 10-3, and number 6 hosting a playoff game against my ACC champ, Georgia Tech. I just think they're the best, most complete team. But of course, tiebreakers could work against them in these scenarios. I just have it projected out that Virginia is going to lose to Duke. And if that happens, I think the nod would go to Georgia Tech here. So you look at this debate now. Where's the debate at? You got number 9, Notre Dame. The committee already established what they think of Notre Dame. Notre Dame's in if they win out. And the committee told you that tonight. Where they're going to be seated is more up in the air. I actually think they could possibly hop over Ole Miss and or maybe Georgia. Probably not Georgia, but maybe Ole Miss, and it would be Notre Dame hosting Ole Miss in a first-round playoff game. Oregon's where it gets interesting. I look at Oregon's schedule down the stretch. They play Iowa, Minnesota, USC, and Washington. I think they're losing one of those four games down the stretch, in particular, the three against the three ranked opponents. That's still a lot of opportunity for Oregon, though. And you're going to talk about the potential of beating a ranked USC, beating a ranked Iowa on the road, and then also possibly beating a ranked Washington team. We'll see if they're still there when the Huskies host the Ducks in the final week of the year. But ultimately, I don't think their loss, no matter what, will be super devastatingly bad. And I think they're going to pick up two really good wins on this path. And I think that's the difference between them and Michigan. What's Michigan's best win? Right now, probably be Nebraska. I don't have a good answer for you. Will the one big win in a one-off against Ohio State be enough to vault their way over Oregon? I personally don't think so, but that is the debate that I think is going to be had. I think that they will be ranked above an ACC champ, Georgia Tech, based on what the committee showed us, but it's not going to matter because they are an ACC champ. So that's how I kind of see it breaking down at the end of the year. Again, a lot of this is super bold because you are trying to predict. I mean, just think back at your preseason predictions and then how many of those teams that you expected to win in week one didn't win in week one. That's kind of what I'm doing for the next month of the season. And it's very hard to do. It's very hard to project forward. And I am also going out on a limb saying that Ohio State's going to lose to Michigan. Because I personally believe if Ohio State conquers Michigan for the first time since 2019, they will beat Indiana in the Big Ten championship and be the number one overall seed. I do think that. I think this Ohio State team is special, really special, and as special as any team we have seen in a very long time. And I think a lot of their wins are better than what people give it credit for. I'll give you Penn State, for example. Ohio State's the only team that did what they did to Penn State. You have respect for Iowa. They played a close game with Penn State. We have respect for Oregon. They played a close game with Penn State. It's not like Northwestern is a terrible team. UCLA was able to string up a couple of wins after beating Penn State with Tim Skipper and Jerry Neuheisel. So I think what Ohio State is doing on its surface is very impressive. I cannot predict them in good conscience to beat Michigan until they do. But if they do, they're the clear number one seed for me because I don't see Indiana beating them. And quite honestly, other than Michigan, I don't see too many teams being able to beat Ohio State. They could on any given day if Ohio State doesn't play their best, but Ohio State has been the mold of consistency so far. That Michigan game can change that. I know how that Michigan game is. But the rest of the teams that they're going to play, if they're as consistent as they have been, guess what? Ohio State's probably going back to back if they can continue to string together this consistency. So I'm going to just put that out there for all the Buckeye fans who are going to hate on me. If Michigan loses, of course, I think you're very much in danger of seeing 3 Big Ten teams in there, and it's going to open up a spot for somebody else. Thank you guys for tuning in. I really appreciate it. Make sure you guys hit that like button if you haven't already. And I'll see you guys in the next video.